In December 2010, 22 men gathered in Zurich to vote on one question: who gets the World Cup? We now know, proven in federal court, that at least 14 of those men accepted bribes. Bank transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts. The money moved before the vote, and the World Cup happened anyway. This is the story of how football's most powerful institution sold the biggest sporting event on the planet. Not allegedly, not according to conspiracy theorists. According to a 47-count federal indictment, according to the United States Department of Justice, according to documents filed in a federal court in Brooklyn, New York. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what FIFA knew when they knew it, and the single decision that proves this was never about football. I'm also going to show you what happened 2 weeks ago, something that should concern every person watching this right now. Because as the 2026 World Cup kicks off in the United States, the same system that bought Qatar 2022 is still operating. Nobody stopped it. In fact, the people who were supposed to stop it just walked away. To understand what happened, you need to understand what FIFA claims to be. Non-profit, self-governed, officially above politics. Founded in 1904 with 7 member nations, today, 211. More members than the United Nations. That number matters, because each one of those 211 members gets a vote, and votes, as you're about to see, can be bought. FIFA's stated mission is to develop football globally, to make the game accessible, to use sport as a force for good. Every 4 years, they organize the World Cup, the most watched sporting event in human history. Over 5 billion people tuned in for 2022. 5 billion people. One organization controls all of it. The television rights, the sponsorship deals, the hosting rights, every dollar that flows through the biggest sporting event on the planet passes through FIFA first. And here's the part they don't put in the mission statement. No government controls FIFA. No independent auditor reviews its finances. Its own ethics committee investigates itself. FIFA is, by design, answerable to no one. In the history of organized sport, no single institution has ever concentrated this much money and this little accountability in one place. That is not an accident, that is a structure. And structures like that don't stay clean for long. December 2nd, 2010, Zurich, Switzerland. 22 members of FIFA's executive committee gather to cast their votes for the 2018 and 2022 World Cups. The candidates for 2022 are the United States, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and Qatar. Qatar, a country smaller than the state of Connecticut, no significant football culture. Summer temperatures regularly exceed 45 degrees Celsius, hot enough to kill people who work outdoors. A country that had never hosted a major international sporting event of any kind. By any rational sporting metric, Qatar should not have won. It won. And the question that nobody in football wanted to answer for years was simple: how? The answer came from documents filed in federal court in Brooklyn, New York. On May 27, 2015, the United States Department of Justice unsealed a 47-count, 164-page criminal indictment. 9 FIFA officials and 5 corporate executives were charged with racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. Those schemes spanned more than 2 decades. Bribes and kickbacks totaling more than $150 million. That same morning, Swiss police arrived at the Bauer au Lac, a 5-star hotel in Zurich where FIFA officials were staying for their annual congress. They arrested 7 executives in their rooms before breakfast. U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch addressed the press the same morning. Her exact words: "The indictment alleges corruption that is rampant, systemic, and deep-rooted, not alleged by journalists, not claimed by activists, stated in a federal courtroom by the Attorney General of the United States." Among those charged, Nicolas Leoz, then president of CONMEBOL, South American football's governing body, charged with accepting bribes to vote for Qatar. Ricardo Teixeira, former president of the Brazilian Football Confederation, faced the same charges. And Jack Warner, president of CONCACAF, the governing body for North and Central America and the Caribbean. According to federal prosecutors, Warner received $5 million in bribes. That money was funneled through 10 different shell companies registered in Anguilla, Cyprus, and the British Virgin Islands. $5 million, 10 shell companies, 3 offshore jurisdictions. That is not a bribe. That is a financial operation. By December 2015, a superseding indictment charged 16 more officials. The total eventually exceeded 50 individuals and corporate defendants from more than 20 countries. 27 of them pleaded guilty. Over $200 million in bribes were documented across the full investigation. 2 generations of football officials were implicated. 5 days after the first arrests, Sepp Blatter, who had just been re-elected FIFA president 4 days earlier, announced his resignation. He won the election on Tuesday. He resigned on Friday. Think about that. But here is what makes this story different from every other corruption scandal. It was not just the bribes. Qatar is a country where summer temperatures kill people who work outdoors. FIFA knew this, and it is documented in their own internal assessments from 2010, the same year they awarded Qatar the tournament. Their solution? Move the tournament from summer to winter. Not, do not give it to Qatar. Not, this is too dangerous. Just move the tournament, protect the players. But not the workers, because building 8 stadiums in the Qatari desert still required human beings. Over 2 million migrant workers from Nepal, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan were brought to Qatar on contracts that tied their legal status to their employer. They could not quit without permission. They could not leave the country without permission. Some had their passports confiscated. In February 2021, The Guardian published an investigation compiled from government records across 5 countries. Their finding: more than 6,500 migrant workers died in Qatar in the decade after the World Cup was awarded. Not 6,500 accidents. These were deaths that Qatari authorities classified as natural causes, cardiac arrest and respiratory failure, without investigation. Deaths that received no compensation. Deaths that left families in poverty with no legal recourse. FIFA generated $7.5 billion from the 2022 World Cup. The legacy fund they created for Qatar workers? $50 million, less than 1% of their revenue, and not a single dollar of that fund was directed to the families of workers who died. Amnesty International called it shameful. FIFA's own commissioned report, published in November 2024, 2 years after the tournament ended, concluded that severe human rights impacts did occur in Qatar between 2010 and 2022. Their own report, 2 years too late, after the money was already made. They knew, they always knew, and they chose Qatar anyway. At the beginning of this video, I told you something happened 2 weeks ago. Here's what I meant. On May 27, 2026, exactly 11 years to the day after the original indictments, a federal judge dismissed the last remaining criminal charges in the FIFA corruption case. Not because the defendants were innocent, because the United States Department of Justice told the court that prosecuting FIFA bribery cases no longer fits the current administration's priorities. The same day, 11 years later, the case is closed. And that is not the only thing that happened. In December 2024, FIFA awarded the 2034 World Cup to Saudi Arabia, a country where migrant workers operate under the same legal framework that existed in Qatar, tied to their employer, unable to leave without permission. Where journalists are killed, where dissidents are tortured, where human rights organizations have already documented labor abuses on current construction projects. FIFA's own human rights advisors warned them. U.S. senators wrote a formal letter urging FIFA President Gianni Infantino not to award the bid. Human rights organizations from around the world filed official complaints. In May 2025, a group of international lawyers, including FIFA's own former anti-corruption advisor, filed a formal 30-page complaint through FIFA's official grievance portal, arguing the organization was violating its own policies. FIFA awarded Saudi Arabia the tournament anyway, without competitive bidding, without binding human rights conditions, without a vote. Qatar was not an accident, it was a system that generates billions of dollars for the people running it, a system that survived arrests, indictments, resignations, and a decade of federal investigation. And now, with the World Cup active in the United States, and the last prosecution quietly dropped on an anniversary nobody was supposed to notice, that system is already building the next one. The contracts are signed, the money is moving, and the workers who built the last stadium are still waiting for compensation. The 2026 World Cup will be spectacular. The football will be extraordinary. The players will be extraordinary. None of that is in question. What is in question is this. When you watch it, and I will watch it too, You are watching a product built by an institution that has been proven in federal court to operate through systemic corruption. An institution that commissioned a report confirming workers died. That paid $50 million instead of $440 million. That just had its last prosecution dropped on the 11-year anniversary of the day it all came apart. That does not mean you cannot watch. It means you should know what you're watching. FIFA knew. They chose Qatar anyway, and they just chose Saudi Arabia. This story is not over. The 2026 World Cup is happening right now. There are more stories like this one. Subscribe and you will be the first to see them.